People keep asking when Kanye West lost it, when the moment was, when the line was crossed. That question assumes there was a single collapse, one dramatic snap that explains everything. But this story does not move in one clean jump. It moves like a slow leak that everyone notices, and everyone steps around, because fixing it would mean stopping the whole building. The real question is not when Kanye lost control. The real question is why the world kept handing him microphones while the warning lights were already flashing, and why so many people profited while telling themselves they were only watching. Because Kanye did not unravel quietly. He did it in public, in front of cameras, in front of crowds, in front of an industry that could have slowed him down, but did not want to. This is not just a celebrity story. It is a story about incentives. And incentives do not care if you are healthy. They care if you are useful. Early Kanye is the easiest part to understand. You can hear the hunger. You can hear the ambition. You can hear the certainty that he belongs in rooms that were never designed to let him in. And the truth is, he was right. He made work that shifted culture. He changed sound, fashion, language, and the way an artist could present themselves as a full universe rather than just a singer on a track. So the myth begins. Confidence becomes vision. Ego becomes genius. Being difficult becomes being pure. People love genius because it gives them a reason to forgive what they would otherwise condemn. Genius is a permission slip. It says, this is not rude, this is brilliance. This is not reckless, this is art. This is not harmful, this is complicated. And once you accept that framing, you start changing the rules without noticing you are changing them. The behavior is no longer judged by the same standards as everyone else. It is judged by output. The deal is simple and it is everywhere. As long as you produce, we will tolerate. As long as you deliver, we will protect the brand. As long as the numbers look good, we will call the warning signs personality. That is the first problem. Because output is not a measure of stability. It is a measure of leverage. Every industry has a hierarchy. At the top sit people who are treated like weather. You do not tell the storm to calm down. You build around it. Kanye climbed to that top tier. Once he was there, consequences became negotiable. People did not ask, is this acceptable? They asked, can we survive this? That is how you can have years where the public sees instability and the system keeps rolling. The system is not built to protect the person. It is built to protect the product. Here is where the story turns darker. Because the media economy learned something, Kanye was not just talented, Kanye was volatile. And volatility is content. A calm interview does not trend. A thoughtful answer does not become a clip. A messy moment becomes an event. So the attention machine begins to reward the worst version of the person. Not because people are evil, because the machine is hungry. And the machine does not pay you for nuance. It pays you for shock. This is the part where mental health enters the chat and everyone pretends to be confused. Is he unwell? Is he trolling? Is he performing? But that confusion is convenient, because if you never decide what is happening, you never have to decide what to do. So people do nothing. They call it compassion. They call it giving space. They call it not judging. But doing nothing is still a choice. And in public life, doing nothing often means letting the loudest thing continue. There is another uncomfortable layer. Kanye had resources. He had teams. He had money. He had access to help that most people will never have in their entire lives. So why did the instability continue escalating? Because help without boundaries is not help. It is management. A lot of people around powerful artists are not hired to protect the person. They are hired to protect the schedule, protect the rollout, protect the tour, protect the partnership. And if the person becomes unpredictable, the solution is not necessarily treatment. The solution is containment. Keep it moving. Put out a statement. Shift the narrative. That works for a while, until the cost rises. This is where people love to talk about cancellation, like the public woke up one morning and decided to punish. But that is not what it looks like when you zoom out. What it looks like is prolonged tolerance, followed by abrupt abandonment. It looks like years of rationalization, followed by a sudden line in the sand when the liability becomes too expensive. Morality did not appear overnight. Risk did. And yes, people can change. But systems rarely change because they grow a conscience. They change because they feel heat. Now we have to talk about the audience, because this is where the conversation gets honest. We watched. We shared. We argued. We laughed. We pretended outrage was separate from engagement. But outrage is engagement, and engagement is fuel. Every time a clip goes viral, it does not matter if it is admiration or disgust. The system reads one thing: attention. Kanye understood that. He understood that being talked about is a form of power. And when you are already powerful, you can afford to treat attention like oxygen. That does not mean everything is calculated. It means the ecosystem rewards the moments that are least stable and most shareable. And here is the moral problem. If the ecosystem rewards instability, then the ecosystem is participating in the instability. This is where people try to simplify the story into villains and victims. But the truth is messier. Kanye is responsible for what he says and does. Full stop. At the same time, an industry can be responsible for rewarding the behavior. A media culture can be responsible for amplifying it. An audience can be responsible for consuming it like entertainment. Responsibility is not a single person in a single moment. It is a network. And networks are great at dodging blame, because everyone can say, "I did not cause it. I just reacted to it." That is how systems fail. Not in a dramatic explosion, in 1,000 small rationalizations. Now let us talk about the genius label, because it is the most seductive lie in modern celebrity culture. Genius makes people feel clever for tolerating the intolerable. It makes them feel like they are seeing beyond normal morality, like they are sophisticated enough to understand that rules are for ordinary people. But genius is not a moral exemption. It is not a crown that turns harm into art. If anything, influence should demand restraint, because the higher your platform, the wider your blast radius. Here is the tragedy. Restraint is invisible. You do not trend for being stable. You do not go viral for listening. You do not become a headline for choosing to step back. But restraint is the thing that protects everyone, including the person. So what would real intervention have looked like? Not punishment, not humiliation, not public shaming disguised as accountability. Real intervention would have looked like boundaries, like limits, like people willing to say, "No, not today." Not because we hate you, but because we refuse to pretend this is fine. And that is hard, because boundaries cost money. Boundaries delay rollouts. Boundaries cancel opportunities. Boundaries upset fans. But boundaries also prevent collapses that destroy far more. Here is another uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the people closest to powerful celebrities cannot enforce boundaries because their livelihoods depend on the celebrity not hearing the word no. So the only boundaries that arrive are external ones. Brands pulling out, platforms distancing, partners disappearing. And when those boundaries arrive, they arrive late and harsh. That is why the fallout feels sudden, because the consequences were delayed for so long that when they finally land, they land like a wall. Now, none of this is about pretending Kanye is a helpless passenger. He is not. But it is about recognizing the way systems treat artists like engines. If the engine is loud but still moving, people keep driving. They do not pull over until the smoke is undeniable. And when they finally pull over, everyone argues about who should pay for the tow. This is also why the conversation keeps getting stuck between two extremes. Either Kanye is a monster and nothing else, or Kanye is a genius and therefore beyond criticism. Both extremes are lazy. Both extremes are comforting, because they avoid the hardest thought, which is that a person can be talented, influential, and deeply harmful at the same time. And if you accept that, then you have to accept responsibility for how you respond. So what does this teach us? It teaches us that celebrity culture is not built to protect people. It is built to extract. It teaches us that media ecosystems are not built for truth. They are built for velocity. It teaches us that audiences are not passive. We vote with attention. We fund with attention. We reward with attention. And it teaches us that when the output is extraordinary, people will stretch morality like elastic until it snaps. If nothing changes, this pattern will repeat. Different artist, different genre, different decade, same incentives. Because the system rewards intensity, not stability. It rewards spectacle, not restraint. It rewards the loudest version of a person, not the healthiest. Kanye West did not just test the limits of fame. He exposed them. He showed how long chaos can be celebrated, how long harm can be postponed, how long responsibility can be outsourced. And when the system finally let go, it did not do so carefully. That was not justice. That was collapse. So here is the last question, and it is the one I want you to actually sit with. Not as a hot take, not as a team sport, not as a comment war. Was Kanye protected because people cared? Or unchecked because people profited? Those are not the same thing, and the answer changes how you see the entire story. This has been the Room of Opinions podcast. If you got value from this discussion, like the video and follow Room of Opinions. And tell me in the comments where you land. Before we finish, it is worth looking at why Kanye became so central in the first place. Because if you do not understand the center, you cannot understand the collapse. Kanye was not simply making songs. He was making a worldview. He built a persona where confidence was not just a trait, it was a philosophy. And that philosophy was contagious. For a lot of people, especially younger fans, Kanye represented the idea that you could be underestimated and still force the world to listen. That you could be dismissed and still become undeniable. That you could say, "I am great," before anyone else agreed. That energy is powerful. It is also dangerous when it becomes untethered from reality. Because once a person builds a brand on being right, it becomes harder for them to admit they are wrong. And once a person builds a business on being unstoppable, it becomes harder for the people around them to ever ask them to stop. The smartest move Kanye ever made, culturally, was expanding the definition of what an artist could be Not just music, fashion, design, politics, religion, the whole identity. That expansion increased his power. It also increased the damage when the center could not hold. Because when you are only a musician, a bad moment stays in music. When you are a cultural project, a bad moment becomes a cultural event. And then there is the problem of scale. Kanye could say something and it would not just reach fans. It would reach journalists, brands, politicians, comedians, teenagers, and people who do not even listen to the music. His words traveled faster than context. They traveled faster than correction. That creates a strange kind of power. And power can make you feel invincible, even when you are clearly drifting. Another layer people avoid is how fame changes your feedback loop. Regular people get feedback from consequences. You say something, you lose friends. You act out, you lose a job. You cross a line, you get told, stop. Celebrity feedback is warped. Sometimes the more outrageous you are, the more attention you receive. Sometimes the more offensive you are, the more headlines you generate. So the brain learns the wrong lesson. It learns that escalation works. And the industry reinforces it. Because controversy is not just noise. It is marketing you do not have to pay for. This is why you cannot reduce this to, why did he not get help? Because help is not just a service you can purchase. Help requires a relationship with reality. And reality is exactly what celebrity culture bends. There is also the question of identity and reinvention. Kanye was always reinventing himself. That is part of his artistic strength. But reinvention can become a way to avoid accountability. If every era is a reset, then no era has to be answered for. If every controversy is just chapter 1 of a new persona, then the harm becomes background noise. And audiences play along because reinvention is entertaining. We love the narrative of the next version. We treat people like seasons of television. But real people do not reset like seasons. The consequences follow you. Now let us talk about the word that keeps hovering around Kanye and never gets addressed properly. Control. A lot of Kanye's public behavior reads like someone trying to wrestle control back from a world that constantly commodified him. And that is understandable. Fame does take control away. Contracts do take control away. Public opinion does take control away. But the response to losing control cannot be taking it from everyone else, is less than #0. 5# is greater than, it cannot be turning the world into a stage where only your feelings matter. This is where sympathy and accountability have to sit in the same room. You can understand how someone got here and still say, this is unacceptable. You can recognize pain and still reject harm. And that balance is exactly what the internet struggles with. Because the internet does not like balance. It likes teams. Team genius. Team monster. Team victim. Team cancellation. But teams are a way to stop thinking. Teams are a way to replace analysis with identity. If you want to actually learn something from this story, you have to resist the team instinct. You have to ask, what incentives kept this going? Who benefited? Who stayed quiet? Who amplified? Who treated warning signs like entertainment? Because that is how you prevent repeats. Not by saying, wow, that person is crazy, but by asking, why did the machine encourage it? There is a final layer here that is uncomfortable for creators too, including people like me. The moment you talk about Kanye, you risk feeding the same attention economy you are criticizing. That is the trap. You discuss the spectacle, and you become part of the spectacle. So the only way to make the conversation worth having is to be honest about what it is. Not gossip, not a clip chase, not a rage session. It has to be a discussion about the culture that produces these moments. Because if we only stare at the individual, we never fix the environment. And the environment is the real story. The environment rewards intensity. It rewards certainty. It rewards people who speak like they cannot be wrong. It punishes humility. It punishes pauses. It punishes the sentence, "I need help." That is why the most mature thing an artist can do, stepping back, almost never goes viral. But the most destructive thing, blowing up publicly, becomes content for everyone. So if you are listening to this and you want a simple conclusion, here it is. Kanye is not the only problem. Kanye is what the system looks like when it stops pretending. He is a mirror, a messy mirror, a brutal mirror. And mirrors are uncomfortable because they reflect us back at ourselves. That is why people try to smash the mirror. They try to reduce it to one easy label, so they do not have to see the bigger picture. But the bigger picture is the warning. If we keep rewarding volatility, we will keep getting volatility. If we keep turning instability into content, we will keep consuming it. If we keep letting talent excuse harm, we will keep normalizing harm. So the question is not, what happens to Kanye next? The question is, what happens to the culture next? Do we build better boundaries? Do we demand healthier incentives? Do we stop treating breakdowns like entertainment? Or do we just wait for the next headline, the next clip, the next person to carry the chaos for our attention economy? This has been the Room of Opinions podcast. Like the video and follow Room of Opinions if you want more long-form discussions like this. And tell me honestly, in one sentence, where you land: genius or unchecked? And let me add one more angle that people rarely talk about, because it is not dramatic enough for a headline, but it matters. The difference between accountability and humiliation. A lot of people say they want accountability, but what they actually want is a public punishment ritual. They want a spectacle that proves the world is fair. They want the fall to be theatrical because it makes them feel safe. But public humiliation is not the same as accountability. Humiliation is emotional entertainment. Accountability is structure. It is consequences that actually reduce harm, not consequences that simply satisfy an audience for a day. If you want to measure accountability, ask one question. Did anything get safer because of it? Did anything improve because of it? Did the incentives change? Most of the time, the answer is no. The incentives stay the same. Only the cast changes. That is why I keep coming back to incentives, because incentives are what guide behavior when emotions fade. Emotions are loud. Incentives are constant. If the incentive is attention, the behavior becomes spectacle. If the incentive is money, the behavior becomes branding. If the incentive is power, the behavior becomes control. And Kanye touched all three. Now, some people will say, fine, so what? Are we supposed to never talk about it? No. We can talk about it. We should talk about it. But the way we talk matters. Talking for insight is different from talking for outrage. Talking for understanding is different from talking for clicks. Talking to learn is different from talking to win. And the reason I am doing this as a long-form podcast is because long-form slows the brain down. Short clips make everything feel like a verdict. Long-form gives you space to hold two ideas at once. 1. Kanye has created extraordinary work that influenced culture. 2. Kanye has also said and done harmful things that cannot be waved away. If you can hold both of those, you can have an adult conversation. If you cannot, you will end up in a team. So what does an adult conversation look like here? It looks like refusing to worship and refusing to dehumanize. Worship shuts down criticism. Dehumanizing shuts down empathy. Both are lazy. Empathy is not agreement. Empathy is understanding why something happened without pretending it was okay. Criticism is not hatred. Criticism is refusing to let power rewrite reality. And power always tries to rewrite reality, because reality is the one thing power cannot tolerate if it makes power look wrong. So here is my final framing, the one I want you to remember after the audio ends. Kanye is not a random glitch in celebrity culture. He is the logical outcome of a system that rewards spectacle, excuses harm when it comes attached to talent, and sells instability as entertainment. If that system stays the same, we will see this again. Maybe not with the same person, but with the same pattern. And the only real choice we have, as audiences, is where we put our attention, because attention is what trains the system. If you want healthier culture, you have to reward healthier behavior. That does not mean being boring. It means being honest about what you are paying for. This has been the Room of Opinions podcast. If you want more deep dives like this, like the video and follow Room of Opinions. And if you disagree with me, good. Tell me why. Just do it without turning it into a team sport. One last thing before I go. If you have ever had a moment where you felt uncomfortable watching someone unravel in public, that discomfort is not you being soft. That discomfort is your instincts working. It is the part of you that recognizes a person is not content. A breakdown is not entertainment, and a headline is not a full human life. So keep that discomfort. Do not let the internet shame it out of you, because that discomfort is the beginning of better culture. And if this episode made you think differently, share it with someone who only knows the story through clips. Clips make everything look simple. Reality is never simple. All right, that is me done. See you in the next one. Take care of yourselves. And remember, attention is a vote. Spend it wisely. Thanks for listening. Like the video and follow Room of Opinions. Until next time. Bye. Okay,